The day he died, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't in pain, but because I was numb. His death came out of nowhere, sudden and brutal. A traffic accident. He was on his way home from work when a truck driver, half asleep, ran a red light. It happened so fast. There wasn't even time for goodbyes. No last words. No final hug. Just a rainy evening and a phone call from the hospital that shattered my world. The funeral was simple, exactly the way his mother wanted it. She was always the one in charge, even though I was his legal wife for 6 years. 6 years, and she never once called me her daughter-in-law. To her, I was just some outsider, someone who took her only son away. I remember the way she looked at me during the service, cold, detached. Not a single hug, not even a forced word of comfort. She stood there, adjusting her mourning scarf like it was part of a performance. I stayed in the corner, surrounded by white flowers and grief, clinging to any shred of him that remained. The only thought looping in my head was, how can he be gone so fast? Why him? After the funeral, I stayed a few days at my parents' house, trying to gather myself. I still had the key to our apartment, the one we bought together, the one we filled with dreams and late-night arguments and quiet Sunday mornings. I thought, at the very least, that place was mine. We were legally married. We both paid the mortgage. Even without a will, I believed I had rights. I was wrong. When I returned, the lock had been changed. My key didn't fit. I felt a knot in my stomach, like I was being erased from my own life. I knocked on the door. When it opened, there she was, my mother-in-law, unpacking boxes in my kitchen, like she had lived there all along. She turned to me without even blinking and said, "You're just a wife. No will, no kids, no claim. This house belongs to the family now." Her voice was sharp, her eyes full of disdain. I stood there, stunned, as the weight of her words crushed down on me. In her eyes, I was nothing, a placeholder, a woman who hadn't given her a grandchild, who'd kept her son busy and away. During those years of marriage, I had swallowed my pride so many times just to keep the peace. I stepped back, stayed quiet, let James be the bridge between us. But now that he was gone, she wasted no time wiping me away like a stain. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just stood there, letting the pain settle into my bones. And then, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I realized something. She forgot one very important thing. I'm not the kind of woman who lets herself be written out of her own story. There are things she doesn't know. Things only James and I shared, things that will matter. I turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last, but my heart quietly bracing itself for what was to come. I didn't know where I'd sleep that night. The home I had built with the man I loved had been taken from me, but I still had something. Memories, a name, and maybe, just maybe, something else she never saw coming. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my car parked in front of a closed convenience store, watching the flickering neon sign blink like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive or give up. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that screams. My phone battery had died hours earlier. I didn't want to go to my parents. They had always disapproved of my marriage. Not because they disliked him, but because they saw how lonely the first became the longer I stayed married. Instead, I called the only person I could think of, Elena. Elena and I hadn't talked much in the past couple of years. Life had scattered us across different routines, different cities, different lives. But she was the kind of friend who didn't ask too many questions when you called crying. She just said, "Come over. I'll make tea." By the time I arrived at her apartment, my body was numb. I collapsed onto her couch, unable to speak for several minutes. She didn't press me. She simply wrapped a blanket around me, handed me a warm mug, and let me exist in silence. It wasn't until the next morning, sitting cross-legged on her living room floor, that I finally said it out loud. She changed the locks. My mother-in-law. She took everything. Elena blinked. Wait, she kicked you out of your own house. I nodded, and the tears finally came. She said I'm just a wife, no will, no child, no rights. She didn't say anything for a while. Then, very softly, that's not how the law works. I know, I whispered, but I don't have the strength to fight her, not now. Not yet. I stayed with Elena for a few weeks. Days bled into nights, and grief came in waves, some so strong they dragged me under. But there was also something else, something quieter, harder to name, the feeling of being erased. When we married, James and I had talked about everything, well, almost everything. We talked about travel, careers, buying that stupid little espresso machine we never used. But we never talked about death. We were young, healthy, in love. We thought we had time. But now that he was gone, I kept turning over the same questions. Had he meant to leave everything to me? Had he trusted that the law would protect me? Or had he just not thought about it? Sometimes I would replay our last conversation over and over again. It had been nothing special, just a text exchange about dinner. He'd said he'd pick up Thai food on the way home. I told him not to forget the spring rolls. That was it. That was the last thing I said to my husband. Don't forget the spring rolls. It felt absurd and cruel. But as I dug through old emails, photos, files stored on my laptop, I began to notice something, a pattern. There were things James had been organizing before he died. Notes about refinancing, emails to a lawyer, even a draft of a message he never sent titled, "For Emily. If anything ever happens." My name, my James. I didn't open it right away. I couldn't. I was afraid that it would confirm my worst fears, that he'd left me nothing. Or worse, that he'd trusted his mother over me. But eventually, on a gray Tuesday morning, I opened it. The message was unfinished. But what was there? It changed everything. If you're reading this, something has gone wrong. And I'm sorry. I should have done the paperwork sooner. I should have protected you from her. You deserve more. I just wanted you to know the apartment is in both our names. But I kept something else in mine only. It's in the safe deposit box. Use the date we first kissed as the code. I love you. I always did. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. The safe deposit box. I had no idea what was in it. But in that moment, it didn't matter. For the first time since James died, I felt something spark inside me. Hope. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't abandoned me. He'd just run out of time. But maybe, just maybe, he left behind a way for me to reclaim mine. It took me 2 days to find the key. I knew James kept it somewhere in the apartment, hidden but accessible. It was a small, bronze key on a plain ring. I remembered seeing it once in his desk drawer, back when we were moving in together, and he was packing up his old apartment. He'd smiled when I asked what it was for. Just something I might need someday, he'd said. I almost didn't go back. The thought of returning to that apartment to her made my skin crawl. But I had no choice. Everything James left for me was being held hostage behind the door. So I waited. I watched from the sidewalk across the street until I saw her leave, purse slung over her shoulder, expression sour and distracted, probably headed to her weekly bridge game or lunch with the other widows at the country club. As soon as she turned the corner, I walked across the street and used my old code to enter the building. She hadn't changed the front entry, just the lock on the unit. But I had the super's number. I told him a half-truth. That I'd forgotten something important. That I needed 5 minutes. That my late husband's mother had locked me out, and I didn't want to cause drama. Just grab what was mine. He looked at me for a long time, then sighed and let me in. The apartment was quiet. It didn't feel like home anymore. My plants were gone. James's shoes were missing from the rack. She'd scrubbed away every trace of us. But she hadn't found the key. It was still there, taped to the bottom of the drawer in James's old nightstand. I peeled it off with shaking hands and held it like it was made of gold. The bank was across town. The safe deposit box was buried in the vault of a quiet, stone-faced building that smelled like metal and old secrets. I gave them the number, signed the papers, presented the key. Inside the box was a manila envelope. No jewelry, no stacks of cash, just a thick, sealed envelope with my name in his handwriting. I sat in the bank's private viewing room, pulled the flap open, and began to read. James had written me a letter, a real one, 4 pages long, every word careful, emotional, alive. Emily, if you're here, it means I'm not. And God, I hate that. I should have done better by you. I should have fought harder to protect you from everything I knew she would try to do. You and I both know she never saw us as a real family. But I did. You were my home. You still are. I've made arrangements. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you. But I've put the downtown studio in your name. I bought it in cash years ago and kept it off the books just in case. The deed is enclosed. So is a letter to my lawyer, who has instructions to file it officially upon my death. You'll have a place, Em. A place that's truly yours. She can't touch it. Live there. Sell it. Burn it. I don't care, just don't let her make you feel small. Don't let grief steal your fire. I love you. I still do. Jay. My hands were trembling. A second deed fell from the envelope, stamped and notarized. And a business card. His lawyer. Someone I'd never met, but apparently someone James had trusted. He hadn't left me with nothing. He'd left me with a key. To a home. To dignity. To the reminder that even in death, he had tried to protect me in the only way he knew how. I walked out of that bank with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't erased. I existed in ink, in intention, in the echoes of James's voice. And I knew what I had to do next. Not for revenge, not even for justice, but to reclaim my name. I waited until the timing was perfect. The downtown studio was small, but full of light. It had brick walls and high ceilings, and when I stepped inside for the first time, I cried not because of the space itself, but because I could feel James in every corner. He had chosen this for me, quietly, intentionally, while I had been worrying about groceries and deadlines and family dinners. He had been carving out a place for me, just in case. I moved in that weekend. Elena helped me carry boxes, her face full of quiet awe as I explained what James had done. She didn't say much, just hugged me tightly before she left. He really did love you, she whispered at the door. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. The next morning, I called the lawyer. He was kind, efficient, and already familiar with James's letter. He asked me not to contact you unless you reached out first, the man explained. He wanted to respect your process of grief. But everything's in order. The property is yours. I'll also be sending you a copy of the trust he started a few months ago. He designated you the sole beneficiary. I hung up in stunned silence. James had not only left me a home, he had built me a foundation. But there was still one thing left to do. I went back to the old apartment. This time, not to sneak in, not to recover anything, just to look her in the eye. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, her mouth curled in disgust. "You again?" I thought I made myself clear. "This house isn't. It's not about the house," I said, voice steady. "Keep it. Decorate it. Pretend it was always yours. I don't care." That caught her off guard. "Then what do you want?" I took a breath and stepped closer, just enough to let my words land exactly where I needed them to. "I just wanted to say thank you." Her eyes narrowed. "For what?" "For reminding me that I never needed this place to feel close to James. For helping me realize how much he loved me even in death. And for pushing me out of a house that was never truly mine, so I could finally build a life that is." She scoffed. "You think he loved you? He never even told me about that studio. Probably didn't even trust you with it." I smiled, not cruelly, just quietly. "He trusted me enough to leave it in my name. He trusted me enough to know I'd find the key. And most importantly, he trusted me to survive you." Her face flushed with something between anger and confusion. But I didn't wait for her reply. I turned and walked away. There was nothing left to prove. In the months that followed, I transformed the studio into something more than a home. I filled it with art, with music, with stories. I hosted dinners with friends, played old vinyls James used to love, and sat by the windows at night watching the city pulse with light. Grief never left, but it changed shape. It became something softer, something that lived beside me instead of inside me. Sometimes I still talked to him, out loud, late at night. I told him about the day, about how the sun hit the bricks just right, about how the tea shop downstairs started playing jazz in the mornings, about how I was okay. And one night, as I sat on the floor reading his letter again, I realized something I hadn't before. James hadn't just left me a place to live. He'd left me permission to begin again, to forgive him for not being here, to forgive myself for surviving him, to reclaim the name they tried to strip from me, and write it on a mailbox all my own. I got a new key made. This one, I keep around my neck.